Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic, let's do it. What's the best case of instant karma you've ever heard of? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. A few years back, I was traveling on the interstate to meet some friends who attended a different college than I did for a weekend. On the way there, I'm in the right-hand lane, minding my own business, when a car tries to cut me off. No big deal, right? Except she ended up clipping my bumper and running me off the road, with her driving speed of 80 to 85 miles per hour. The other driver keeps on going along her merry way, while I'm on the shoulder attempting to contact the local police to report an accident. 5 minutes later, a state trooper pulls up behind me and asks what happened. I explain the situation, describe the other vehicle, including a partial license plate number, and he asks if my car is still drivable. After confirming that it was, he said, "Just follow me up to this next exit. I got a call about a driver who's out of gas and needs assistance." We pull up to the next exit just shy of a gas station. Sure enough, it was the girl who was the other party in my hit and run. She tried to deny anything occurred until the trooper looked at my front bumper damage and her back end damage, assessed the paint colors matched, etc. The bonus is that her plate had the partial information I had gathered as she sped away. Turns out, the girl has no insurance and no license, gets hauled off to jail on a hit and run, all because she couldn't slow her ass down and be a decent driver. Working as a medic a long time ago, I got called for a leg injury at a Friday night soccer game. We get there and determine it's most likely a torn ACL, painful but basically any hospital can handle, and it's not really a priority. So we explain to the patient it will probably be faster and a lot cheaper if she just wants to have someone else drive her to the hospital that's literally around the block. Here comes the white knight into our story. This guy oozed friend zone, explained how he's a medical student going for his doctorate and she needs to go to the local trauma center, which is a good 30-minute drive. We explain, no, we'll go to the local, they can handle it. However, the patient pulls the nastiest look at us and says her friend knows more than my partner and I because he's actually studying medicine and we're just ambulance drivers. My partner and I give each other that look. An ACL tear isn't a priority for a trauma center, especially on a Friday night. Drunk driving crashes and gunshot wounds are going to be taking up the ER there. We oblige the request with documented protest. The friend rides with us. We make him ride up front. He explains how the surgeon there is his friend, and she'll get seen right away. We roll in, and sure enough, there's about a dozen ambulance crews trying to unload patients in much worse cases than ours. We get to triage after about 15 minutes, and the RSN tells us to put her in the waiting room. She starts crying bloody murder. Cherry on top, she asks her friend to do something. He calls his buddy surgeon down. Turns out it's not his buddy, but one of his teachers, who proceeds to yell at him about thinking that an ACL tear needs to come to a trauma center. She could have been in and out of the hospital in an hour if she'd listened to us. Worked at a convenience store several years ago. Check my other posts for a couple of funny stories. This was back before gas pumps were all either card at the pump or prepay. It was about 7 a.m. and the morning rush was on. A suspicious fella pulled up to our farthest away pump and positioned his car so that it was not easily visible from the building. This is a dead giveaway for someone who's going to drive off without paying. My manager and I watched this guy as we're ringing up customers, and sure enough, when he fills up, he gets in the car and peels out, making a run for the road. He leaves our lot via a small access road that ends at a traffic intersection, red light. He stops for the light, then decides he needs to get the hell out of Dodge and guns it through the red light. When he does, he breaks his drive shaft. The car coasts to a stop right in the middle of the intersection. But wait, there's more. Guy walks back into the store and asks if he can use our phone because his car broke down. My manager says, sure, after you pay for the gas you just stole. Guy gets all indignant. I didn't steal no motherfucking gas. Getting more and more agitated and confrontational. Just then, 2 police officers walk in. Now these are 2 lady cops, both in their late 50s and early 60s, who usually are stationed at the local high schools, but always stop in for a coffee and a pastry. These ladies are the nicest people you'd ever meet. always with smiles on their faces. As soon as they turn the corner after entering, they see the guy getting into it with my manager. Their demeanor changed in an instant, going from kindly grandmother to "I'm going to kick your teeth in microseconds. They manhandle this guy away from my manager, push him up against the wall, cuff him and stuff him. You know how they always think to yourself, why is there never a cop around when you need one? This time, there was. A week ago, my husband was on a work trip and he got a free upgrade to first class. He got on the plane and sat down in 3A. A few minutes later, a woman boards and tells him in a bitchy tone, "Excuse me, you're in my seat." He takes out his ticket and shows it to her politely. She also has a ticket for 3A. She insists he needs to move because she paid for the seat and it's hers. The flight attendant gets involved and my husband says he'll move. He was very polite. So the flight attendant has him stand aside and says hopefully there will be another first class seat. They're about to close up the plane and the flight attendant welcomes them on the flight to Charlotte. And the woman in 3A goes, "Oh shit, she got on the wrong flight, idiot." My husband felt very smug watching her leave and enjoyed his 3A seat. First day of school, starting first grade, and I was wearing my uniform for the first time. Everything fitted me, except my shoes that were bigger than they should be. My mom was going to change them later that day, but I had to survive my first day without any incident. All was good until break, when I decided it would be an excellent idea to play soccer for a while. Of course, it happened. My shoe flew all the way across the yard and fell hard on somebody's head. I was mortified, but luckily nobody else seemed to be paying much attention to it, until the kid pointed at me and started laughing as loud as he could, screaming for everybody to see what had happened. Now people were staring, and I was about to start crying. But not even 5 seconds go by when another kid runs straight into the laughing kid, making him fall to the floor, on top of his really dark chocolate milk. He was a mess, covered from head to toe in milk, and since people were already looking in his direction, everybody laughed at him. Nobody noticed me picking up my shoe and then running to the bathroom. Karma. Weird accident. I don't know, but everybody remembered Milk Boy that year. I was driving down a remote highway road out in Buck Nowhere, Iowa. The road is known for extremely limited vehicle traffic, but a lot of deer. I was going right at the speed limit, extra aware of the deer risk, when a pickup came right behind me and started tailgating. It was a no-pass area with lots of hills, so the other driver was smart enough not to force his way past me, but he was definitely angry, inching closer and closer to me. That's when I saw the deer walk into the road about 100 yards ahead of me. I had enough warning to ease my speed down so I didn't hit the thing. That caused the tailgating driver to flip his lid. He swerved, honked, and flipped me off as he passed me. Then he hit the deer full on. Deer went flying. His pickup was totaled. I did the right thing by calling 911 and sticking around to make sure the rescue services made it to help him. The guy never looked at me once during our entire wait. I was working, driving in the most right lane on our way to pick up a patient when a brand new Callaway 757 Corvette came flying behind us. Apparently we weren't going fast enough, so the guy swerves around us, has the top down wearing a fedora, then swerves back into the right lane and decides in the last minute he wants some Popeyes and attempts to turn into the parking lot. I think he watched too much Tokyo Drift and thought he could handle it, but the wheels locked and he went straight for some big-ass boulder in a wall, completely wrecking this amazing car. There was a cop right at the Popeyes who saw the whole thing. The best part is the car had paper plates from the same day. Literally probably had the car for less than an hour, considering it was barely 10 in the morning. About a year ago, I was visiting a tourist town in my state. A man playing a guitar and singing was in the middle of the side street, pedestrian-only area, and was playing really well. He had a hat with plenty of 1s, 5s, and 10s in US dollar notes. I sat down and enjoyed his music while waiting for my mother to come out of the shop she was in. My mom came out, and it was time to go, so I politely tipped the man for his service. It just so happened to be his last $2. I, 28 female at the time, had recently moved to this state and had nothing but my clothes on my back after leaving a bad situation. As my mother and I rounded the corner to a back alley, shortcut to our vehicle, I saw a piece of paper on the ground. I picked it up and it was a $20 note. Absolutely no one was around for me to find the person who may have dropped it. Had that been the case, I would have honestly inquired. I put the bill in my pocket and proceeded to the car. Once my mother and I returned to her house, I pulled the bill out of my pocket and unfolded it. To my surprise, it was two $20 bills stuck together. Karma? I should think so. I was walking my dog recently when some shitbird walked up to us. He was wearing a big coat with a furry collar, big dark shades, and a fedora type thing. So it was like a really bad pimp outfit. Anyway, this outfit is bulky and weird and hiding the dude's eyes, so my dog was already a little on edge, just regarding this guy carefully without making a fuss, because he's a good boy. And then this dipshit starts barking at my dog. This freaks my dog right out and gets him barking at the stranger. Now, my dog is an 85-pound German Shepherd, so despite him being a very good boy who had done no wrong but been needlessly antagonized, I'm still concerned with something bad happening for which my dog might be liable. So I take my dog aside and try to soothe him, and he's starting to calm down by the time this jackass walks by. The moment this chuckle walks past us, he slips on a patch of black ice and lands flat on his back. We're talking flat as a board. Head, shoulders, everything hitting the concrete at the same time. Nothing broke this dude's fall in the slightest. He didn't seem too fazed by it, because it seemed like he was on something, but it was still pretty satisfying to watch. I didn't bother to say anything and resumed walking my pup. That's have to be me witnessing it with my dad. He's wiring in a fridge, and it doesn't have a fuse, so he puts a fuse in, which might be too low in amps. He isn't sure what it was supposed to have in it, a fuse which predictably blows and trips the beaker. So, he grabs a piece of wire and uses that. Keep in mind that at this particular time, I just passed an electronics and computing course. So I say to him, if that wasn't because the amperage was too low on the fuse, and instead the fuse was right, but something in the fridge is broken, instead of blowing a fuse, it'll blow up the fridge, instead because that wire won't melt like a fuse would. Nah, he says, followed by those iconic words, I know what I'm doing. I argue with him, pointing out there's a reasonable chance this thing will just blow up if you turn it on. Check what fuse it's supposed to have and get one of those. He's adamant this will be fine. He says, I know what I'm doing. The circuit breaker isn't too far away from the kitchen. I can see it through the door, which the fridge is by. If I look down the hallway, switch it all back on, he says. I saw the puff of smoke and flash of light from where I was standing, along with the sizable bang that came from the bottom of the fridge. The best case of karmic justice I've ever been aware of, and that affected me personally, was the instant I found out someone died. This person abused me verbally, emotionally, and a little physically for years. They abused others as well, including their mother, even when their mother was over 80 and frail and needed help. This person mocked them for being slow and displaying all the signs of dementia. Additionally, this person lied to the police about a confrontation and an altercation, and the police believed I was the aggressor, which I was trying to avoid being hit and not allow them to hit their mother, while this person yelled and threatened violence, including hollering they wanted to shoot me. This person had a lengthy history of drug use, everything from alcohol and weed as well as crack, and it winds up meth. Meth was what killed him. Smoked it, stood up, had a heart attack, dying before they hit the ground, or so I was told. The karma was so thick I could cut it. The justice was so sweet I could taste it. The relief was so tangible I stopped having nightmares of this person killing me. So a lot of these cover some good results of some type of karmic cycle. But this one, I mean, I get it. I don't get it. But, feeling joy or karma over someone's death, it's kind of that whole, if you go out seeking revenge, dig two graves, that person, horrible that they may have been, you don't know what happened to them in their life or who loved them. I don't know. Maybe I'm a hippie, but, little compassion, even if they're mean. At work the other day, serving tables, I had a couple where the gentleman was very conversational and tried to have some fun while I was at the table helping them. Meanwhile, the lady wants to buy a wine glass from us, which we happily sell by request. The lady then asks for a discount because she works for the property the restaurant is on. I politely let her know that unfortunately our wine glasses are excluded from discounts, and she decided to complain to me that we don't give her enough discounts for working the property. Lunch went on, and the gentleman continued his happy-go-lucky ways, while this lady scolded me the rest of the time for not giving her a discount. The check comes, and the gentleman thanks me for the great service, and then gets up to go to the restroom. Lady decides she wants to fix the check, and left me a 3% tip. That really expensive scarf thing you left at your table, that you're telling the hosts you swear you forgot there? Guess I must have missed it or something. I'm from Denmark, and I used to ride the bus for 50-ish minutes every day to get to and from work. One day, 2 people got on the bus a few stops after me, a rather large woman and a rather smaller man, both of them Greenlanders, which becomes relevant later. I'm not sure what their relationship was. May have been mother and son, may have been a couple, or may have been something else. As mentioned, the woman is rather large, so she can't quite fit into the regular seats, which honestly is fair. There's not much leg space in our buses. So instead, she sits in the middle portion of the bus, where there are a few seats that are usually reserved for people with disabilities. After a few minutes of driving, she for some reason just kinda starts shouting, not sure why or what, and the man with her doesn't really do anything about it. I just turn the volume on my music up a bit and ignore it. As we get closer to the city and more people enter the bus, she starts bothering a lot of the people, and, close to her, even going as far as to shout at a girl who was exiting the bus. Again, not sure exactly what she was shouting. Finally, this older lady walks up to her and asks her firmly but politely to please keep her voice down. Upon hearing this, she just kind of flips out and screams something about the lines of, "Is it just because I'm from Greenland, you king racist?" So the older lady just kind of backs off. At this point, no one really wants to do anything about the shouting woman on the bus, and the mood is a bit tense on the bus. A few more minutes pass as people enter and exit the bus, the shouting lady still doing her thing, but then a ticket inspector enters the bus. He goes down the aisle between the seats and checks the tickets, and when he gets to her, it turns out that she has no ticket. She and the man with her are then asked to leave the bus with the ticket inspector and surely have to pay a fine for that. Of course, I have no idea what was going on and why she was shouting, but she was bothering so many people that it was so satisfying to watch her at least having to pay a fine for not purchasing her ticket. This still makes me smile. When I was in university, I took the bus to and from school every day, about an hour each way. The bus terminal for our suburb was at the end of my street through a path and on top of a big, big hill, down which you had to drive with all the other traffic to get into the city. Get on the bus rolls up to the red light to wait for green to pull out onto the main road. Light turns green and the bus starts to pull out. Suddenly the driver slams on the brakes, everyone lurches forward hard and the driver lays on the horn. As I look up, I see this big-ass silver Cadillac blasting through the red light. What's worse, the woman driving was this dyed blonde-hair, prissy 60s woman in a red power suit who simply flips the bus driver off without even looking and barrels down the hill. The bus driver curses her out loud and we carry on. Now at the bottom of this hill, the police often set up speed traps because they can catch people coming out of a curve on the road on the hill. People tend to go way over the limit in a morning rush hour. Guess who got caught? The bus driver pulls the bus over by the speed trap and beckons a police officer who comes into the entry part of the bus. The bus driver says, "Is it still illegal to run red lights in this province?" To which the cop replies, "Sure is. Did she?" Bus driver, "Oh yeah." The cop hands her his ID and says, "Well, here's my card. Get in touch. And if you're willing to come into court and testify, we can tack that on as well." And the bus driver says, "Honey, I get paid to go to court. I'll see you there." And no joke, the whole bus erupted in applause. We could have driven over an IED on the way to school that day, and I still would have called it a good day. In 1988, when I was 8 and my brother was 10, we were flying from Florida to Arizona for the holidays by ourselves. Because we were kids flying solo, we were seated first on the plane. My bro and I are seated in the middle and window seats. A man in his 70s or so comes down the aisle and sits down in the aisle seat in our row. He hems and haws for a moment and starts aggressively pushing the stewardess call button. The stewardess comes over, and he proceeds to go into a rant about how he got paid good money for this seat and doesn't want to sit next to children. The stewardess asks him if we've bothered him, and he says no. She tries to accommodate him by finding him another seat. He flat out refuses to move because, again, he paid good money for this seat. The stewardess says, "No problem, sir. It's a packed plane. Holidays." So she says, "Guess what, kids? You're moving to first class." The old guy starts saying, "Well, I'll move to first class. That's not a problem." The stewardess probably says, No, sir. You paid good money for this seat. You can stay right here." We moved to first class, and it was tubular. Driving on a snowy freeway in Michigan, and all the cars are going about 35 miles per hour because the plows haven't been through recently, and we had a massive storm. The right and middle lanes are in okay condition because they've had a lot of cars on them, but the left lane is still very snowy. Even the lane line markers have little snow berms, which makes changing lanes dangerous. I see an Audi sedan tailgating people and trying to speed by without having to go into the far left passing lane. Eventually, they bully enough people into the changing lanes and speed off. I passed them on the off-ramp about 5 minutes later. The ramp had a somewhat sharp curve to the left, and they must have still been going pretty fast when they hit it because their car was stuck in snow 10 feet off the road. The car was angled slightly nose down with the back wheels above the snow by a foot, and it appeared they'd gotten at least a little airtime. There were two guys standing waist deep in snow on either side of the car, screaming at each other and looking like they were about to get into a fight. I often bring junk cars to the scrap processing yard, and I did it with one of my workers there a favor and sold him a good running car for very cheap. He didn't have the extra $200 to pay, so I told him it was okay and to get it to me another day. Well, he went to ask his boss for an advance on his check to pay me sooner than later. He gets by paycheck to paycheck. Well, his boss wasn't having it for some reason and instantly went off on him and completely humiliated him in front of everyone when he was only trying to do right by me and my business. About 10 minutes later, a huge tractor trailer misinterpreted the turn on a scale and took out his boss's car, completely tearing through the metal of his car from front to back, damaging his doors, fenders, mirrors, and windows, and finally ripping his front bumper off completely. The worker I sold the car to right after said, "What a shame. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy." You could see the blood boiling in his boss's face. Reposting my own story. Driving through central Nevada on a 2-lane highway leaving Betty, I was taking a sweeping right-hand turn when a newish Camaro with very distinctive set of stickers on the rear window passed on the left after crossing a double yellow line, and one nearly was involved in a head-on collision with a semi coming the opposite direction, and two nearly collided with the front of my car when he swerved back into my lane. In that part of Nevada, the towns are roughly 60 miles apart. The next town is Goldfield, a notorious speed trap. About 5 miles outside south of Goldfield, lo and behold, the Camaro is pulled over. Thank you, NHP. About a half a mile after I passed them, the NHP officer was apparently done giving them their speeding ticket. Camaro was clearly pissed, and once he was far enough away, he really took off, and in about 5 miles, made up at least half or 3/4 of a mile, and I was doing about 80. Again, he crossed the double yellow line and passed me on a blind corner. When he passed me and was swerving to avoid another high-speed head-on collision for an illegal pass, he apparently missed the fact that the speed limit dropped from 75 to 25 in about a quarter mile. The county cop was sitting just past the 25-mile-per-hour sign with a radar gun and nailed him going at least 80 in a 25.